Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is no stranger to going viral. This week, a video of her getting arrested at a pro-reproductive rights rally circulated all over the internet. But AOC and other lawmakers got some blowback for appearing to have faked being handcuffed, even though some pointed out that they were asked to put their hands behind their backs, and police don't need to handcuff someone for them to be arrested.
Co-host of the Low Society podcast and writer Angie Speaks wrote an op-ed published in Newsweek titled "AOC's Fake Handcuffs Reveal Politicians Have Become Influencers and Nothing More." That delves into AOC's latest viral moment. Angie is with us now to break down the meaning of all of this. Hi, Angie. Welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Hello.
This
Thank you.
kind of reminds me of, when Joe Biden said, I was arrested visiting Nelson Mandela. And then when he had to clarify, okay, I wasn't arrested, but I was stopped. And so, it kind of reminds me of that. But what do you make of all of this? What do you mean by they've just become influencers?
Well, I thought the incident was the perfect opportunity to sort of highlight for everyone how this sort of new generation of politicians is influenced by the performative conventions of social media. And I guess I used AOC as an example because she has sort of a track record of this kind of thing. The Met Gala was yet another kind of moment that was obviously engineered for social media, that was laundered as activism. This is yet another one of those things. And it's a newly emerging mode of operation that's becoming more ubiquitous.
It reminds me of for a while, there was a drive to appear in in congressional hearings. Congressperson, asks a really kind of stupid question that's more like a statement of their professed beliefs because they want to clip that. They want it to be in a commercial or whatever, or something for their supporters. The phenomenon of political figures, wanting to harness whatever the media or whatever new media it is to kind of rally support is not exactly new. But I do take your point that the social media influencer kind of framing is probably a useful way for thinking about what they're doing now. So how is it? What would you identify as the distinguishing aspects of this phenomenon?
Yes, that was one of the critiques I got when I released the piece of, this isn't a new phenomenon. But there's something particularly pernicious about the incentive structure of social media and the way that the attention economy functions on it. If you look at influencers and the way that influencers behave, histrionics, doing these huge things in order to get attention, starting drama with other people, all kinds of different things are a lot easier to do. And also this realm allows people to renegotiate the political in very emotional terms, since social media is about and also allows people to stir up emotions and to get spectacle to people much easier than they previously could. I think it's important to look at the way the conventions of social media are now influencing our politicians, especially ones who are millennials and have sort of been raised in this primordial ooze of technology.
I agree that AOC is especially media savvy in general and social media savvy. And I do think that there's a danger of social media activism or performance replacing real, actual legislating and governing. But I do think in this case, AOC has been pretty good on the Roe v. Wade rollback. I think she's offered a lot of tangible suggestions. She's pushed Biden to do certain things. She's pushed him to articulate why getting out the vote is important in terms of specific policies. So I think this is an example, perhaps, of her putting her money where her mouth is more than other examples. And I do think, to me, I don't think that I know that there's some controversy over this, and I know you guys spoke about this on Rising on this very show this week, but I don't think that they were actually faking having being in handcuffs, because AOC put a fist up in the air. So that would have required magic wrists or something.
But even then, there was something incredibly performative about it. And the idea of an imaginary audience is something that is part and parcel within the mode of the influencer. It was almost as if she was saluting fans or some kind of like imaginary audience. And also the incentive to kind of construct a personal fable is part and parcel of the conventions of social media as well. And yeah, she's incredibly savvy in terms of this mode of the influencer. And of course, yeah, she's on the issue of abortion, like you said. But at the same time, she wasn't the only one who was there who participated in this stunt. It seemed like it was something that was done specifically for the eyes of social media. And yeah, that was sort of the observation I was making.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, especially in look, you've got AOC who shows up for this sort of rally, for this sort of event, makes it performative, makes a big splash. But this is somebody who says, and this is kind of the problem I have with the squad in general, and really just what I would classify as like woke leftism that's kind of emerged. A lot of this kind of came from the Bernie Sanders movement, right? And then the head of the beast was cut off largely by the establishment Democratic Party. And now there's this movement without really a leader. And so what it's kind of emerged into is this sort of, now they're fighting for what they say, they're fighting for rights of all these different groups of people, when the movement originated as for the working class, helping workers, helping everyday people, helping build up the middle class in America. And so they say, well, we're for the workers, that's who we represent, that's what we're all about. But then they go and they just focus on what I would say are more social issues. This one's very important. I agree with AOC on this largely and on this matter. But I would have liked to see her show up for like the Amazon union workers, right? But where was she for that? And so these types of things, it's annoying when we see her get so much attention for this and then say, I'm for the workers, that's what I care about, and then doesn't really actually show up for the workers.
I would also say that this social media and liberal feminism also kind of go hand in hand. I mean, Me Too was largely a social media driven movement. And many of the people who kind of came up on the back of that have now become influencers. Feminism is sort of taken on the mode of operation of the influencer. So it doesn't surprise me that this moment that was quite clearly engineered for social media and the sort of response, the emotional response that's elicited from social media is sort of wrapped up with this specific issue. It's quite commonplace now, especially when it comes to women's rights, and also females in power. It's become this weird, pernicious mode of operation where you're supposed to negotiate on emotional terms rather than political ones. And this sort of performative duress, especially something that we constantly see at AOC doing, this performative duress. It's a power move. It's not something that's wrapped up in weakness or victimhood. She's a congresswoman in one of the most powerful nations on the planet. And I feel like these performative stunts make people forget just how powerful she is, and also other people hit there, Ilhan Omar, other Democratic representatives that were there. And it's sort of like activism is cosplay, in my opinion.
But
go ahead. I'm glad that I was going to say, I think that there is definitely a role for political theater. I think that there's nothing wrong with political theater, especially when, again, you're accompanying policy with it. But I do think that there is, for me, the real cosplay that's happening is with the squad calling itself progressive and then voting, as they recently did, for a resolution to expand NATO. A resolution that urges NATO countries to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. That, to me, is the real cosplay that I find so disturbing. And that I think that should really be called out. Just wanted to nudge that into the conversation, because I think that's probably the area where there really is, for me, the biggest disconnect between the progressive image and their actual policy positions. And this speaks a little bit to what we were talking about with Matt Taibbi in another clip about how war has become kind of rebranded, and there's a lot of bipartisan consensus for war. And I do think that if you're going to call yourself progressive, that you have to be, you shouldn't be for expanding NATO or escalating the proxy war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and
Sorry
that's kind
if I
of
just
my
took
point.
discussion
Well, and
wrong.
that's sort of my point of this is that, you know, the movement there was this big movement, a big buildup in the movement in 2016, and then it sort of had nowhere to go. And where it's gone is into this more performative, more of these social issues, and then we're closing the door to the actual things that the movement really rooted itself on. And now that's gone by the wayside. I don't even know where it is. And now if you're actually not called a progressive, if you still believe in those economic principles and being anti-war, but if you disagree on maybe some of the social stuff, then suddenly that makes you no longer progressive. So they can call themselves progressive, Katie, unfortunately, because that is the new progressive movement. It is about the social issues more so than it is about being anti-war and you know, that's where it's at now, unfortunately. And AOC, I think, shows that in this situation. And like I said, not showing up for Amazon Union.
Well, we got to leave it there. Angie Speaks, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll be back with more Rising in just a minute.